The lottery ticket. Dreams built on hope. He stands third in line, plastic sandals scraping against the cold tile floor, one crumpled bill in his hand, pressed so tightly it's damp with sweat. Behind him, a woman rocks slightly from side to side, murmuring under her breath. If I win, I'm gone. I swear I'm gone. Ahead, a man in a work uniform stares at the screen, not really watching, lost in some private daydream where debts vanish, and freedom begins. The corner store smells like dust and hot sugar. A fan buzzes above, stirring stale air that carries the low hum of life barely holding on. It's Tuesday night, jackpots at 30 million. And for a few minutes, that's all that matters. When it's finally his turn, he steps forward like he's approaching something sacred. He doesn't smile, but there's something in his eyes, something wild and fragile. The cashier, half bored, slides the machine across the counter. He picks his numbers carefully, like they mean something, like each one carries a secret code to the life he's supposed to be living. Maybe he'll open that shop he always talks about. Or move his mother out of the tiny room she's been sleeping in since 1992. Maybe he'll just breathe for once without checking the balance on his phone right after. It's easy to scoff, to call it delusion. But at that moment, he's not thinking about the odds. He's thinking about escape, about dignity, about relief. Because sometimes buying a lottery ticket isn't about being rich. It's about not being here anymore, not being tired, not being scared, not being humiliated by bills that don't care how hard you work. He clutches the ticket on the way out like it's made of glass and prayer. Walks home slower than usual, not because he's tired, but because now, for just a little while, the future feels open. This isn't just a financial transaction. It's an emotional lifeline dressed as probability. And maybe deep down, he knows the math. But emotion doesn't ask for permission, it acts. And that's the quiet truth we rarely admit. So many of our financial decisions aren't about logic. They're about longing, fear, hope. They're stories we tell ourselves when reality feels too heavy to carry alone. So the question isn't why he bought the ticket. The real question is, what was he trying to buy with it? The hidden truth. Emotions drive every decision. We like to think we're rational, that our choices are the result of logic, planning, careful calculations. But the truth is far messier, far more human. You don't choose a savings plan. You chase safety. You don't avoid the stock market because it's volatile. You avoid it because it reminds you of your father's job loss when you were 10. You don't buy that flashy car because it's a good investment. You buy it because part of you still wants to feel seen, respected, admired, envied. Morgan Housel said it plainly. People do crazy things with money, but no one's crazy. Everyone makes decisions based on their own unique experiences that seem to make sense to them at that moment. It's not stupidity. It's not ignorance. It's emotion. Layered, buried, often invisible, but always there. You think you're budgeting, but you're managing guilt. You think you're investing, but you're chasing validation. You think you're stuck in debt, but you're trying to prove something to someone who isn't watching anymore. Behind every purchase, every dollar saved, every financial risk taken or avoided, there's a story, a wound, a dream, a fear you've never fully named. This isn't weakness, it's wiring. You're not broken. You're just emotional, like everyone else. And that's the uncomfortable truth we all avoid. Money is emotional. Spreadsheets don't tell stories, but bank statements do. They whisper things like, I was scared. I needed to feel safe. I wanted to feel like I mattered. I couldn't say no. But here's the liberating part. Once you see that your financial life is shaped by emotion, not just strategy, you finally gain the power to change it. Not by becoming colder, but by becoming aware. By asking yourself, what am I really trying to feel when I make this decision? by realizing that money doesn't just measure value, it reveals emotion. So don't hide from it. Start listening to it. Start naming it. Start asking yourself, who's really in control, your plan or your past? Because once you see the story behind the decision, you can finally start to rewrite it. Wall Street panic, when fear overrides logic. Phones are ringing, non-stop, shrill, urgent. Screens flash red, the floor buzzes like a hornet's nest. Voices raised, hands waving, traders pacing, shouting numbers that no longer mean anything. It's October 2008, and the world is cracking. One man, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot, slams the desk with his fist. "Sell it? I don't care anymore, just sell it." His voice shakes, not with anger, but fear. Not the kind of fear that makes you cautious, the kind that makes you run. Across the room, a younger analyst stares blankly at her screen. Her hand hovers over the keyboard. She knows what the models say. Hold, ride it out. But logic feels like a whisper in a hurricane, and that whisper is being drowned by headlines, by pressure, by a gut feeling screaming, "Get out before it's too late." It doesn't matter how smart they are. MBAs, years of experience, hours of analysis. At this moment, none of it matters, because fear has taken over. Fear doesn't ask for data, it demands action, fast, frantic, irrational. Traders shout across desks like lifeboats in a storm. "Are you still holding? Everything's tanking, get rid of it. This is worse than '01. You have to pull out." These aren't cold, calculated professionals anymore. They're humans in survival mode, pulse racing, throat tight, logic drowned in adrenaline. What started as concern becomes chaos. A market crash isn't just numbers falling, it's faith collapsing, faith in systems, in strategies, in the idea that someone, somewhere is in control. Morgan Housel captures it perfectly. When investors are falling over themselves to sell, rationality becomes irrelevant. Panic has its own gravity. And that gravity pulls hard, not just on individuals, but on entire institutions. Hedge funds liquefy portfolios overnight. Retirement accounts evaporate in days, and billions vanish. Not because the math was wrong, but because the emotion was louder. It's easy to look back and say, "They should have waited," but you weren't there. You didn't feel the walls close in. You didn't hear the fear in your manager's voice, or watch your net worth bleed out in real time. That's what panic does. It blinds, it distorts, it accelerates. It turns financial plans into emotional battlegrounds. And the damage, it isn't just money lost, it's trust shattered. In markets, in yourself, in the idea that logic alone can protect you. Because when fear walks into the room, even the smartest minds start reaching for the exit. The cost of emotional blindness. Lessons from disaster. Shijik Reed. He sat alone on the bus stop bench, elbows on knees, staring down at a wad of losing lottery tickets. $600. Everything he had left that month. Gone in 2 days chasing a dream that felt so close. It almost felt real. His rent was due in a week. His daughter's school fees weren't paid, and all he could hear was the echo of his own voice from 2 nights ago. "I can feel it. This time it's mine." The high of hope had blinded him. Not to the odds, he knew the odds, but to his own desperation. He wasn't trying to win, he was trying to escape. Across town, another story unravelled quietly. A man in his 50s watching CNBC, face pale, hands trembling as the Dow dropped another 700 points. He'd spent decades building that retirement fund, but now he felt like he was losing everything in slow motion. The TV screamed in panic. His phone buzzed with alerts and texts. "Are you selling yet? This might be the big one, His gut churned. He clicked "Sell all." And just like that, he locked in the loss. Morgan Housel once wrote, "Doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave." The man thought he was protecting his future, but really, he was running from fear. Not long after, the market began to recover, but he didn't, because the worst damage wasn't financial. It was emotional. He couldn't forgive himself, not for losing the money, but for being so afraid. These stories aren't rare. They happen every day, in quiet apartments, crowded convenience stores, office break rooms filled with stress and silence. People making financial decisions not with strategy, but with unspoken emotions they don't even realize are in control. Shame, fear, loneliness, pride. They creep into the room without asking. They whisper things like, "Just this once. You deserve this. Don't be the last one out." And before you know it, the decision's made. Not by your brain, but by the part of you that's still hurting, still hoping, still scared. That's the cost of emotional blindness. Not just lost money, but trust, stability, and self-respect. You can't outsmart what you won't admit is driving you. But you can start noticing, you can pause, you can ask yourself, not what should I do, but what am I feeling right now that's pushing me? Because the truth is, emotion is always at the wheel. The only question is whether you're watching it drive or pretending you're not even in the car. The power of stories. Why narratives? Trump numbers. A man sits in front of his laptop late at night. He's watching a video with millions of views. A guy in a rented Lamborghini standing in front of a mansion saying, "I used to be broke. Now I make $50,000 a week while I sleep. Let me show you how." There's a whiteboard, there's fast cuts, there's a limited time offer, and something about the way he talks. It feels real. Not because the math makes sense, but because the story does. Housel says it best. The most powerful force in finance is stories, not statistics, not spreadsheets, stories. We all think we're immune, but we're not. Because a good story bypasses logic. It speaks directly to emotion, fear, hope, envy, desire. And that's where real decisions happen. Take the dot-com bubble. People poured money into startups that had no revenue, no business model, no future, but they had a story about changing the world, about getting in early, about being part of something revolutionary. It didn't matter that the numbers didn't add up. The narrative did, and when the story started crumbling, so did billions of dollars. Or think of Bernie Madoff, a man with a charming voice, a calm demeanor, and a promise of consistent returns. He didn't lure people with math, he lured them with certainty in an uncertain world. That was the story, and it worked until it didn't. Even marketing thrives on this. Nobody buys life insurance because of actuarial tables. They buy it because they imagine their kids being safe. Nobody budgets because they love Excel. They do it because they picture a future where they finally sleep peacefully at night. Stories wrap emotions in logic's clothing. They make the irrational feel responsible. They make risk feel noble. They make gambling feel like a strategy. You could show someone 10 pages of evidence. Or you could say, "I was just like you, and look where I am now." Guess which one wins every time? That's why understanding your own story, your financial narrative, matters so much. Because if you don't know the story you're telling yourself, someone else will sell you theirs, and theirs might not have a happy ending. Awakening to reality, embracing emotional intelligence. He sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, staring at the overdraft notification like it had punched him in the chest. His apartment was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. He'd just spent $800 on a weekend trip he couldn't afford. Flights, outfits, dinners, all to impress people who'd already forgotten the conversations. Now, rent was due. The credit card was maxed. And for the first time, he couldn't lie to himself. It wasn't about living life. It wasn't about self-care. It was about a quiet ache, a need to feel admired, included, seen. And he'd paid for it in silence with shame. He buried his face in his hands. Not because of the money. He'd lost more before, but because he finally saw what he'd been doing all along. Every treat yourself moment was fear of being left behind. Every investment in the latest trend was just needing to feel like he mattered. Every ignored budget was another refusal to sit with emptiness. And in that still, painful moment, he didn't make excuses. He didn't blame the system, the economy, or the algorithm. He just let the truth land, and it hurt, but it also freed him. Because now, for the first time, he had clarity. He saw his patterns, his pain, his emotional blind spots, and he knew he could change. He opened a notebook, wrote down the last 5 financial decisions he made. Next to each, he scribbled what he'd felt when he made them, not what he thought. Loneliness, fear, jealousy, guilt, hope. And something shifted. It wasn't shameful anymore. It was awareness. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't weak. He was human. And humans don't need more logic, they need more honesty. That was the moment emotional intelligence began. Not in a seminar or self-help book, but in silence, in pain, in truth. And from that moment on, he wasn't just budgeting, he was healing. He wasn't just saving, he was reclaiming control. He wasn't chasing a number, he was finally choosing peace. That's the real awakening. Not just understanding money, but understanding yourself in the presence of it. Redefining financial wisdom, emotionally smart decisions. Real financial wisdom doesn't begin with numbers. It begins with honesty. The courage to admit that every dollar you spend, save, or invest is carrying something deeper. A feeling, a fear, a memory you haven't fully faced. Morgan Housel puts it simply: controlling your behavior is the most important part of investing. And behavior is driven by emotion. This changes everything. Because it means being smart with money isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. It's not about chasing the best strategy. It's about asking, why am I doing this? It's not about beating the market. It's about not being beaten by your own fear, pride, or pain. The real work isn't just learning financial principles, it's learning by yourself. Your triggers, your emotional patterns, your personal money story. Because when you know what drives you, you stop being driven by it. So if you've ever made a financial decision you regret, not because it was irrational, but because it was emotional, you're not alone, you're human. And that's where wisdom starts. If you feel this shift, if this truth lands in you, comment below, money is emotional. Let it be your first act of conscious financial growth. Your quiet declaration that you're no longer ignoring what's really behind the decisions. Because this is just the beginning. Beneath every budget, every investment, every dream of freedom, there are deeper truths waiting. Truths not just about money, but about who you are. And what you're really searching for. Let's go find them together.